Have you ever just looked around and wondered why, in a world of billions of people, no two of us are exactly alike? Or, why even kittens from the same litter can look totally different? Well, this incredible variety is one of the biggest puzzles of life, and today we're going to start putting the pieces together.
I mean, just look at these little guys. Same parents, but each one has its own unique pattern. Now, this isn't just some random fluke. It's a perfect little snapshot of genetic variation. Each kitten got a slightly different mix of genes from mom and dad, kind of like a different recipe, and that's what makes them look distinct.
So that really raises a fascinating question, right? If we get our traits from our parents, how come siblings aren't just carbon copies of each other? Let's dive in and unravel that mystery.
Okay, before we get any deeper, let's just make sure we're all on the same page. Let's define exactly what we mean when we say variation in biology. It's actually pretty simple. Variation is just all the differences that we can see between individuals of the same species. So it's not about comparing a cat to a dog, it's about comparing one cat to another cat.
Now, you might be sitting there thinking, okay, sure, we're all a little different. Big deal. Well, it turns out that these differences are absolutely essential for the survival of, every species on Earth. Let's get into why.
You can think of variation as the raw material for evolution. Without it, natural selection just couldn't work. I mean, if every single organism was identical, one bad disease or one big change in the environment could just wipe out the entire species in one go. But because of variation, some individuals are bound to have traits that help them survive and reproduce, passing on those helpful genes. It's basically a species' ultimate survival toolkit.
To really get a handle on this, we need to split things up. We have to separate the underlying code from what we actually see on the surface. Think of it like the difference between an architect's blueprint and the actual finished building.
So on one side, you have genetic variation. This is the blueprint, the differences in the DNA code itself. And on the other side, you have phenotypic variation. That's the finished building, the actual traits we can see, like height or eye color. And importantly, that final building is shaped by both the genetic blueprint and things from the environment, like what you eat.
Okay, now here's where it gets really interesting. These observable traits, these phenotypic variations, they actually come in two totally different flavors. Let's break them down.
Just look at these two graphs for a second. On the left, you've got human height. See how it makes that smooth bell curve? That's because there's a whole range of heights, from short to tall, with basically infinite possibilities in between. But then on the right, you have blood groups. There are only 4 options: A, B, AB, or O. That's it. There are no in-betweens. This visual contrast is the perfect way to understand the two types of variation.
So that first type, the one like height, we call continuous variation. For traits like these, there are no separate categories. They exist on a spectrum. Think height, weight, skin color, you name it.
And the second type is discontinuous variation. These traits fall into nice, neat, separate boxes. You either have it or you don't. You can either roll your tongue or you can't. Your blood type is one of a few clear options. Simple as that.
This table sums it all up beautifully. But look, the most important difference, the real key to understanding this, is that last row, controlled by. Continuous traits, like your height, are complex. They're influenced by lots of different genes and by your environment. But discontinuous traits, like your blood type, are usually controlled by just a few genes with no real environmental influence.
So that's the theory. But how does this actually play out in the real world? Well, scientists are out there all the time measuring these things in nature. Let's walk through a classic example of how they do it.
Imagine a team of researchers out on a rocky beach. They're studying a population of limpets. They gather a sample, and one by one, they carefully measure the length of each shell and record it on a tally chart. This is science in action. Step 1 is always careful observation and data collection.
And then, when they take all that data from their tally chart and plot it on a graph, this is what they see. Bam! That classic bell-shaped curve, what we call a normal distribution. This shape is the telltale sign of continuous variation. It's a huge visual clue that tells them that the length of a limpet's shell isn't a simple either-or kind of trait, but one that's shaped by lots of genes and environmental factors.
So we've seen how different traits are expressed, but that brings us to a much deeper question. We know genes get passed down and shuffled around, but where do completely new traits, brand new genetic blueprints, even come from in the first place?
I mean, really think about that. If all we're ever doing is inheriting and shuffling the genes our parents already have,
how does anything truly new ever get introduced into the gene pool? The answer, in a single, incredibly powerful word, is mutation.
So what is a mutation? It's basically a spontaneous and random change, a typo in the DNA code. When that typo happens, it can create a brand new version of a gene, which we call an allele. Every single genetic trait that exists in the world today started out millions of years ago as a mutation.
This slide shows it perfectly. As DNA is copying itself, every now and then, an error sneaks in. A piece of the code gets swapped out or added or deleted. Now, most of these tiny errors don't do anything, but every once in a while, they create a new functional instruction, a new allele. And this is the result. A tiny mutation in a gene that controls color can create new alleles for brown or green or yellow. These grasshoppers are a living, breathing example of how a completely random change at the molecular level can produce the incredible variety of life we see all around us. Okay, so let's bring it all home with an analogy. Think of mutations as brand new cards being added to the deck of life. Then, things like sexual reproduction are constantly shuffling that deck, and processes like random mating and fertilization are dealing out completely unique hands to every single individual. It's this creating and shuffling that drives all the variety we see in nature.
So you see, variation isn't just about why kittens or grasshoppers look different. It is the engine of evolution itself. It's what allows all life to adapt to new challenges, whether it's climate change or a new virus. And that leaves us with a pretty massive thought. As our world keeps changing, which of these new variations happening right now will become the key to the future of life on Earth?